Okay, everybody see the screen? Excellent. All right. So we've got the 3 keys. In there are a couple of the things that we're going to cover today. You can actually click on some of the links and just start typing if you want to. Okay, so without further ado, I will share the stage with Jennifer.
Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be here. I'm Jennifer Terry. A little bit about me, not a lot, just I've been in education for over 25 years. Please don't stop and do the math. Just pretend you don't know. I have had a variety of teaching roles from pre-K to 8th grade in classrooms. I've been an instructional coach at the school and district level. Currently, I'm a school consultant and coach. I work in the area of culture responsive pedagogy and culture responsive social emotional learning, particularly. Really quick, we want to know, we're going to start off with getting something from you. So if you could open up your chat there, if you can't see it, we want to hear from you. We want to know what brought you here on a Saturday today. What is your why for being here today? If you could just pop that into the chat. Oh, you can't hear anything, Laura?
Uh-oh.
Hold on.
Can everybody else hear? Can I just get a thumbs up if you can? Okay. So, knowledge is power. I love that.
Laura, you may need to pop out and come back in if you're having trouble.
Jill is here with curiosity. Curiosity is my favorite way to kickstart a learning trajectory, which I'll talk about. So love that. Dawn says, learn how to effectively integrate STEAM into everyday teaching. Yes. And then Jackie says, looking to start STEM programs at my library. I love that. Okay, and Shannon says, I would like to improve the STEM program at my library. So what you'll notice is we've got teachers and librarians here all together, which is really amazing. Amber says, I am a pre-K to 6 STEAM. I am a great at the A, but want more about the ST. I love it. And then let's see, Alyssa, good morning, Alyssa. She says, I am on the library board of the Hospers Public Library, and we are looking into these resources. And thank you. Thanks so much. So glad that you're here. Erin says, more opportunities to grow as an educator and serve students well. Excellent. And Wendy, this year I am in a new role as a tech coordinator teacher and SEL teacher. I want to learn more about bringing STEAM into our district. You are totally in the right place. And Carrie says, I am ELP and love to include STEAM into my curriculum for talent development. Awesome, everyone. Welcome, welcome. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Yep. Sandra says she loves science and it's a great place to get more. Yay. We do have the more for you. Well, thanks for sharing that. Just kind of get us to connect together today. And I want to say that by being here today, you're answering that calling of your why, but also, I'm echoing in.
Okay. Let me see. My apologies. Oh, because I'm on shared, it's really hard to find the screen, so I apologize for that. Let's see. Let me stop share for a second. Can everybody turn off their mics? I'm assuming that maybe somebody's mic is on.
No, they're all
No? Are you still echoing?
All right. Is that good? Sorry. Nothing's more annoying than having tech issues. I'm sure you're all aware. All right. So I just wanted to say, by being here today, you're answering your calling. And I think the calling we all have is to change that world too, by igniting the love of learning in students. And it's such an honor to be with you in this room. And I can tell that you are dedicated to your work because it's Saturday morning and you're here. I would love to share with you our why a little bit. And as we head into this, so for Yen and I, what we do in Key Learning is we imagine a world where every child has the tools and the capability to fulfill their destiny. We believe that every child already comes with the innate ability to be successful. They have that curiosity, they have the tools. We just need to support them and facilitate with the right kind of teaching to get them involved in the learning. And so that's where That's where we come from. That's our heart. I want to introduce you to Jan, Dr. Jan Verhoeven. She is a learning theorist with a PhD in curriculum and instruction. She's a certified online instructional designer and a STEAM teacher trainer with over 21 years of experience teaching high school, college, grad level, and in informal spaces as well. So she's going to kind of take over here and share a little bit more about why you're here today.
So hi, everybody. Like I said, thank you so much for coming. If you have any questions during this program, you can go ahead and either type it in chat or unmute your mics. We are totally okay with that. We would love to make sure that all of your questions are answered. One of the reasons why we started Key Learning is because I want to share a statistic with you. Okay, if we look at the STEM workforce pipeline, what you'll notice is that it's projected that by 2028, 8.5 million STEM workers are going to be needed. But then if we work back on this pipeline, you'll see that only about 29% of our university graduates are coming into a STEM career. Now, most of the leaks that we normally mitigate for are in college, high school, and middle school. But when we look at the research, it turns out that if a student isn't excited and curious and doesn't have a positive impression of STEM by 8th grade, they've already decided whether or not they're pursuing a career in STEM. So what that means is we've got to catch them early by elementary school. And here's the statistic that worries me. And it's part of the reason why with Key Learning, we're here to support educators and librarians who are teaching elementary age kids. Right now, if we look at the if we look at the national assessments for math in 2019, 58% of our students, 4th grade students, tested below proficiency in math. In 2015, that was 59%. That's 3 out of 5 kids. 3 out of 5 kids who are testing below proficiency in math and science in 4th grade. What that means is more than likely, they're not going to be choosing a career in STEM by the time they reach 8th grade. And so in many ways, by you being here, it's about being included in this important mission to really inspire and excite as many elementary kids as possible, to give them positive experiences and identities in STEM, so that by the time they get to 8th grade, they can say, oh yeah, STEM is for me, and this is what I want to do. So here's one of the reasons why those statistics are where they are. Probably when most of us were going through school, we had old standards, and the teaching methodologies for those old standards were about facts hammered into students. Worksheets, timetables, right? And more worksheets about repetition, right? And memorization. But then what came along was Common Core. And what happened in Common Core was that 21st century skills got woven into the standards. Now this happened, by the way, my dog is in the room and she's got a squeak toy. So if you hear squeaking, it's the dog. Okay, sorry. All right, so going back, Common Core has the 21st century standards embedded. Next generation science standards, which got adopted, I believe, in 2017 in Iowa, also have Common Core. The new social studies standards, art standards, all of them incorporate 21st century skills, which, unlike the hammer, which accepts one form of thinking, one form of learning, one form of assessment, Common Core was about being adaptive, right? Being able to adjust to maybe even careers that haven't been invented yet. But a majority of our teaching system still employs and reinforces teaching strategies that are about facts hammered into students. And this is the disconnect in our elementaries. And I'm willing to bet a lot of you probably know some colleagues who are still teaching with this sort of methodology. And that's what we're trying to address. This methodology here, facts hammered into students, and changing that so that we can go into 21st century learning, where students learn to innovate with skills and tools and not facts, shifting the emphasis from memorization to skills-based learning, communication, right? Critical thinking, creativity, and collaboration, the 4 C's. So again, embedded in the standards are these 4 C's. And what we want students to be able to do is to innovate with the new tools and the new standards that they have. Okay? All right. So let's go back to this vision. Imagine a world where every child has the tools and the capabilities to fulfill their destiny. I've spent an entire lifetime trying to create this society, an entire lifetime. And what I want to do is share a little bit of my story so that you can get an understanding of maybe, why key learning is just a little different than probably what you might be, accustomed to when it comes to professional development and things like that. So I just wanted to share, about 2 years ago, I received my PhD. And during my dissertation, I developed the very first theory that explains how we learn in the 21st century. And it's called interactive spatial learning, or ISL. Now, ISL is about how we can ignite student curiosity so that it drives them to find more information and answers on their own. Then students apply those answers to issues and problems that face them. So in a nutshell, ISL is about letting students drive their own learning process. Now, for some of you that may not be familiar with this, we're going to help you today with those 3 tools so that you can see how this works, to give you a little taste of that. So components of this groundbreaking theory are already being taught to thousands of teachers from all over the world who have taken our key learning workshops, classes, and trainings. Now, as you can see, I've devoted my entire life to learning and teaching to create this world. But there was a point where I almost quit and I almost left it all. And I would imagine with the pandemic teaching the way it is right now, a lot of you may be considering some of that as well. So you see, I was a former biology teacher, and based on the work that I was doing in that program, we created a biotech program. I was actually recruited to move across the country to be a biotechnology department chair at a brand new college. I was working 50 to 60 hours a week, where I'd be teaching or planning nonstop while also managing my department of 15 instructors and over 300 students. I had 2 young children at home whom I barely saw because I'd be at work before they woke up, and then I'd be home by the time they were in bed. So you can imagine, I was constantly exhausted. The hours and the stress were so much that I began to suffer from chronic migraines that would last for days. These were blinding, debilitating migraines that had either put me into the emergency room or they turned me into a zombie because of the pain medications that I had to take in order to function. I began to despise teaching all the time and trying to fix all the problems that were associated with it. And I was just being crushed by all of that weight. So as an act of desperation, I left my position and I nearly left teaching altogether. So just wondering, does this sound familiar to you? So like on a scale of 1 to 10 in the chat, how exhausted are you right now? Like how stressed are you? Wendy says an 8. Laura says 8. Sandra says 9. Amber says 7 or 8, depends on the day. I agree. Some days are a lot harder than others, especially with the pandemic, for sure. Jill says 7. So we're kind of on that high end of the scale a little bit, right? Probably higher than we normally are on a typical teaching day. For me, I actually left teaching for a bit because I was so burned out and my head wasn't able to take it. So I buried myself in grad school because I was convinced that if I worked harder to find a solution for the world's problems, to tackle the education problem, I thought I could not only fix the world and what was happening in our classrooms, but that I could fix myself. So I continued to work long hours doing research and teaching and writing, but there was just very little improvement to my health. I had become a chronic workaholic, and not in a good way. And so then that's when it happened. I found myself walking downstairs around 11 p.m. to get myself another cup of coffee to stay up and work. And then the world just started to spin. I blacked out and collapsed. My family rushed me to the emergency room because I thought I might have had a stroke. I was anxiously awaiting for the MRI. My husband and 2 sons were gathered around me when I came to this realization. If I stroked or if I died, all of my hard work would be lost. All of it. And it was there that I realized I had completely driven myself into the ground. So even though I had come up with this revolutionary theory, I was still operating under an old paradigm of work harder, work harder, work harder. So I wasn't actually living the theory that I created. And I had forgotten that it wasn't all about me. It was about my students. Working harder wasn't the key to successful teaching. Are you picking up what I'm laying down? So by the time I was released from the hospital with the case of over-caffeination, I had to completely change my lifestyle. So besides taking down my excessive coffee intake, I swear this is only my 2nd cup today, and this will be it. I got on the treadmill. I began to schedule time off to take care of my body and my brain. And as a workaholic, I had to get accountability buddies because I'm telling you, it's really hard to break an addiction, right? So I recruited friends and my family to hold me accountable for taking those breaks so I couldn't make excuses for work. And that's when I realized, finally, that taking care of myself was an act of productivity. So does this make sense? Like, remember that old adage of like, put your mask on first before you help others, right? Makes sense, right? Okay, that still rings true, even in teaching. So then I returned to my theory and I looked at how do I work less and put my students in the driver's seat of their own learning. And that's when everything came together. So my years of teaching high school, college, and in informal spaces, my prior experiences of working in the lab, and ISL, my theory, I put that knowledge of learning and teaching together. And this is what I figured out. In my old paradigm, teaching students was the equivalent of teaching someone how to drive, but you are always in the driver's seat. So how many of you actually have teenagers or had teenagers that you had to teach driving? Anyone? Yeah? Yeah. There's a difference, right? Between having a kid that gets A's and passes the written test, and then, of course, you being in the driver's seat, right? They're not going to learn how to drive the car. You've got to move over. So ISL is about helping you shift your thinking to get you out of the driver's seat so that the students drive the learning. So the first opportunity I had actually to see this theory in action was in my son's school here in Ames. This was when my kids were smaller. In my son's 5th grade class, we had 52 students, 52 in a classroom, standing in excitement, engaged with their environment and with each other in finding solutions and answers to the properties of matter by experimenting with slime and glitter. I went there. I went to glitter. Okay. And I had the joy, the absolute joy of standing back with their teachers in awe because we were doing so little directing, so little disciplining, so little management, and so little need to push and motivate because they were all engaged in doing it themselves. Instead, we watched as that learning exploded and blossomed before our eyes. And to this day, these students are in high school now. They still chase me down the hall and tell me about their latest experiment or remind me about the slime that they did in 5th grade. So this is what I invite you to do. You can do this in your classrooms and in informal spaces, in the library, which I've also done, and in workshops with other teachers, online, and in environments with families. So the process that we've embedded in Fierce and Fearless works, whether you're a teacher with students 5 years to 205. And this engaging theory is going to support you to work less, have more time for yourself, and enjoy teaching at a higher level while addressing standards across different subjects along the way. And I know a number of you are here because that's what you want. You want that transdisciplinary connection. So especially now in the middle of a pandemic, when we are forced to take away all of the existential stuff and focus on the essential stuff, it's about using ISL to help a teacher with teaching in the 21st century. It's about knowing really how to truly organically teach in authentic ways, online, offline, and in person with the technology that we have. So, like I said before, ISL is at the heart of the Fierce and Fearless STEAM Teacher Program. And so today, Jennifer and I are going to give you a little taste of this year-long program, a little taste with those 3 tools to ignite your love of learning, your students' love of learning. And these tools are things you don't even really need to plan into your lesson. You can use them on Monday to put your students in the driver's seat with STEAM. So I just want to ask, are you all ready to ignite the world with me today? Yes? Awesome. So let's get started. Okay. So what I want you to do is you're going to take a sheet of paper. Remember, I told you this is like one of the tools that you're going to actually practice and use throughout the day. Now, if you don't want to use the sheet of paper, if you're like, we are not killing trees today, that is totally fine. In the manual, if you scroll down to page 6 is what we're going to be doing. So you're going to take the sheet of paper, and this is one of the reasons why I love teaching elementary age kids. You're going to fold it hot dog style, right? And this is a technique that you can use with kids as long as they have paper. Okay? So it's folded in half. Now, this is a standard technique that I use. It's embedded in a lot of the Fierce and Fearless things we do. It's called a T-chart. And the reason why a T-chart is so wonderful is because it makes what kids are thinking visible to you. Okay. Now, usually what we do on a T-chart, and I'm sorry because on the camera it's reversed, so I have to, check all the time. Okay. So on the right side of the T-chart is where you have your kids write down observations and facts and information that they may pick up with whatever activity it is that they do. And then the left side is where they infer and conclude and think. So you can almost visualize this or imagine that this is what I see on the outside and this is what I think on the inside. Okay. Now you can use T-charts in a variety of ways. The thing is, these are great for getting kids to think about what they wrote on the outside, right? And it gets you to see what is actually going on the inside of their brains. Now, we're going to use a T-chart for this practice. And don't worry, because in the manual, there are 3 different kinds of T-charts that we gave you. So one for using your senses, one with lines, and one without lines, depending on what levels you want to do. Okay. For us, though, I'm going to invite you to use the T-chart for this info session. And what I want you to do is, can you see that? So on the right side, I want you to write down like what your vision and application are. And I'm going to show you that prompt in a minute. And then on the left side, you're going to write down your notes and observations. Okay. Notes meaning, how can I apply this? How can I think about this? What am I noticing and things like that? So remember, okay. So on the left side, notes and observations, right side, vision and application. Okay. So for this first T-chart, I'm going to just go back to my slides. This is what I want you to imagine. And this is the vision and application. So it's on the right side. Let me share my screen. There we go. By the way, it looks like this. Oop. So here's like one of them. So you can see that there's a variety of different ones that you can use, okay? All right, but what I wanna do is have you use your T-chart, and you are going to think about, close your eyes and imagine that your Fairy STEAM Advisory Council member, whose name is Sarah, is giving you all the things that you need for your dream classroom. And I want you to imagine what your highest vision of this looks like. What does your very best day in the classroom look like if you had everything you wanted? What is that ideal day? And I want you to start like thinking about what that looks like in your head, okay? So again, you know, Sarah just went poof, here you go. Here are all the things you need. Go forth and inspire the world. What are your students doing in this ideal classroom? How are you feeling in this ideal classroom? What are you doing in this ideal classroom? Right? Like, where are you? Like, just imagine this space, or in the library, right? Imagine the perfect workshop that you're doing. What are your students doing? How are you feeling? What are you doing? And what does 100% learning look like in your classroom? Okay, once you have that vision, I want you to jot some of those things down in your vision side, okay, of the page. And the reason why I share this with you is because when I had those really, really dark days of teaching, my first year teaching, for example, and then of course, you know, when I had those migraines and things like that, it was my vision that became my North Star. It was my vision that allowed me to think about the big picture. And so even though that day may have been an entirely yucky, like I need a glass of wine at the end of the day, I knew though that I was still going to work toward my vision, right? Like this was just a day. But in the year, I still envisioned and worked toward that ideal vision. And this is what I invite you to do. Because in many ways, in Fierce and Fearless, it's about crafting what your vision is and then putting the different pieces in place to make that vision happen for you. Okay? All right. Everybody have some things that they've jotted down? Yes? Okay. So now I'm going to talk a little bit. Oh, yes. And what does your day look like when you're done? All right. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about Fierce and Fearless. Okay. The Fierce and Fearless program was designed to teach engaging STEAM all year long with confidence across any platform. What happened, you remember March 2020, right? When like everything changed and moved. As soon as that happened, we also as Key Learning shifted as well, because like I said, one of my superpowers is that I'm an online instructional designer. And so we immediately came to attention and went, all right, what are the videos? By the way, you can catch them on YouTube, on our YouTube channel. What are the videos? What are the things that teachers need right now to be able to teach across platforms? And we were able to reach 120 teachers with that, with our program then. All of that is embedded in Fierce and Fearless STEAM Teacher. We've been doing Key Learning for over 3 years, but even before that, I worked with the Ames Community School District. I've worked with, informal settings, high schools all over. This is like our flagship program. All of the work and knowledge that both Jennifer and I have accumulated are thrown into this to give you engaging STEAM all year long with confidence across any platform. Now, FFST, if you're wondering if if this is for you, and if you're wondering if other people can take advantage of this, FFST was written for elementary teachers of all subjects and specialties. If you're art, if you are, technology, if you're music, the thing is STEAM, what we want everybody to think about is STEAM is for everyone. We need innovation and creativity everywhere. And so we're going to show you how to do that in a transcurricular way. These are for librarians who are looking to put in STEAM programs, after school facilitators, and homeschool. I know that with the pandemic, there's a lot of homeschool parents who have created pods where you've got a group of elementary students together. This is ideal for them too if they want to put STEAM in. Now, the way our program is built is based on the literature and our understanding of professional development and transformative teaching. Transformative teaching doesn't happen in just one shot. It's about interacting with mentors, seeing multiple examples of successful lessons and activities. And so the program itself has three main tiers to it, or three main cogs that make it work. The first is professional development. So the first 3 Tuesdays of every month, starting in July, you'll get a 1 hour session in either mindset, methodology, or mastery. I'm going to talk about that in a minute for PD. You'll also receive mentoring from a community of practice. Jennifer and I and a couple of our STEAM coaches that have run successful STEAM programs will be in there. And then you will, as soon as July 1st comes up, you will get a year's worth of STEAM challenges right away that you can start using in your classroom or the library. Okay? All right. So like I said before, the PD is crafted around mindset, methodology, and mastery. Meaning, what does it look like in terms of mindset when we put a student in the driver's seat? And like, for those of you that have teenage kids, and for those of you that, just imagine this, right? Kid has never been behind the wheel before, and you're putting them in the driver's seat and they have turned on the engine. It is extremely terrifying. And this is why there's a lot of mentoring going on. It's terrifying, but at the same time, this is where the learning happens, right? This is the only way innovative teaching and learning can happen, is when the kids are driving. But that's why we give you the support and the mindset of, okay, I can do this. I'm going to just breathe and everything will be fine. We'll start in a parking lot where we don't hit anything, right? That's the kind of mindset that we're sharing with you. Methodology. A lot of the tools we're going to show you today is about methodology. What kinds of teaching methodologies can I use no matter what subject I'm teaching? Notice the T chart can be used in any subject. It can be used, and I'll show you what I mean in a little bit when we go into the tools. But these are things that go across grade levels. But the nice thing about employing the same teaching methodologies is it provides a structure and a regularity for your kids, so that when they experience the same teaching methodologies, the same kinds of ways of thinking happen. So if you're doing T-charts, all of a sudden their inference turns on. They know what to expect each time you use it, okay? And then mastery is about mastering the science and the technology pieces of STEAM. Because what we found is, even though NGSS are very robust standards for the next generation science standards, they're very robust, but the content behind it, the science behind it, requires a little bit more content knowledge than most people have. And so we're going to give you some of that content knowledge, so that when you see a lesson, like if you're going to Teacher Pay Teacher or these other places, you can evaluate and assess for yourself whether the science is accurate and whether this is rigorous for your program. Okay, so you're going to get the support you need to transform your teaching so that students drive the learning. You're going to incorporate the 4 C's in all subjects that you teach. And then you're going to be able to teach engaging STEAM all year with low cost materials. Like, we use things like Q-tips and index cards and, popsicle sticks. I love popsicle sticks. I drive my kids crazy because they're all over the house. And then you're going to manifest your STEAM vision. The one that we created today is the one that you're going to keep building on until you can will it to happen. That's what we want for you at the end of this year. So you can get all of this. Like I said, Sarah is like your fairy STEAM advisory council person. She is magical. And she's going to share her screen in a minute. You can apply for this program by March 5th, okay? And it gives you the Fierce and Fearless STEAM registration, $1,500 in STEAM stipends and supplies. Books, by the way, I'm going to show you one of the books and Jennifer's going to show you the other. This one is called Teaching Science to Every Child. So if you are wondering, how do we teach in equitable ways? How do we reach diverse populations of students? That is Jennifer's superpower. And so the two books you're going to get right away, Teaching Science to Every Child, and Jennifer has Cultivating Genius. These books are amazing. And they're going to bring that equity and diversity piece into your teaching and your library program. But also, there's a lot of research in there. So if you need to advocate to your principal why your classroom has suddenly gotten so loud and that there's glitter and slime flying all over the place, you can say, no, they're learning, and let me show you the research for why this is so powerful, right? It's going to give you the research that you need to back up these incredible learning processes for you. You're also going to get Starmatica texts. And Jennifer, you want to talk about that?
Yes. I am, okay. So as a teacher, elementary teacher, one of the things that I never had enough of is being offered here to you in Starmatica and Redorium. So I'm going to talk about Redorium first. So Redorium has the science text where you go in, the students get on, you assign them a text, and what happens as they're reading is the system asks them questions, the program, and it automatically adjusts the content up and down. So it's the same content they're all getting, and it automatically adjusts the reading. So based on the students' answers and understanding of the text. And I was like, seriously? That's like genius. Like where'd that come from? And then Starmatica, this I was like blown away because I was always looking to have the same text in multiple Lexiles for my classrooms because I had my ELs, I had the students in SPED, I had the high readers, and you could never find the same content, science or social studies. So Starmatica has science and social studies texts that you can choose by Lexile. So it's the same book, and you can have it at the lower Lexile, the on target, higher, and you can also get guided support so that it could read to the students, or students could ask for help around different pieces. That alone, I mean, I would like sign up for this program just to get a year's access to this free for my class, for my whole class. Because as an educator, it was a win-win. I mean, if I had this, I would have saved myself hundreds of hours just trying to find all the articles and texts. So I want to say boom.
Yep. And then, like I said before, STEM Challenge Bundle is actually from Feel Good Teaching, Carrie Tracy. And this woman is amazing. STEM Challenge Bundles are great ways of creating these passion projects around like engineering designs, like, you know, how do you build, you know, bridges out of popsicle sticks, and how do you create, you know, marshmallow catapults and all kinds of things. There are 52 challenges in that bundle. So if you're like, okay, what am I going to do about looking for activities throughout the year? Well, you've got 52 of them. It would be overly ambitious to get all 52, but you know, we wanted to make sure that you were well prepared for the year. And I calculated this because we're also at the same time creating a library, a unit library of transcurricular units, which in fact, at the end of this, we're gonna give you an offer on one of these, okay? But this value, because you're gonna have access to all of this, anything that Key Learning does is over 7,200. And that's all yours when you apply. So let me stop share for a minute. Sarah, do you wanna say more about the application process?
Yeah, thanks. I am just going to drop in the chat the link to start the application. And then actually, I'm going to share my screen first. Then I'll give you the link, just in terms of time. Share screen. There we go. Okay, so what you're looking at here is the landing page. When you start an application, the green button, Apply Today, is what launches you into the web portal where you'll actually complete the application. But there are some resources here I just wanted to draw your attention to really quick. The timeline's at the top, but down here in the materials, there is a copy of the STEM Scale Up Program application. So there's a PDF version of what you're going to be uploading into the web portal if you prefer to see what you're getting into first before you start. Now, if you're in the web portal, you have the opportunity to start something, save it, and come back to it. That's not a problem. But I know sometimes I like to sort of see what I'm getting at. And then also in these materials and resources, there's help guides on how to start an account, list the administrators, etc. And then this is your really important. Well, I want to also draw your attention. There's a scoring rubric, and you can take a look at that to see what we're using to evaluate just the 3 short, open-ended answer questions at the end of the application. And then this is a really, really valuable resource to you. So the regional managers, there are 5 other people with jobs like me. They are fantastic, and our whole mission, especially now through March 5th, is to make this process of applying to lower the barrier to access for these opportunities for you and the kids that you reach. And so we're really thrilled to be able to help you. And so there is no dumb question. We really just, I hope that you will reach out to my colleagues and myself with any questions in your interest or any things you want to know about the application process. So I'll drop this in the chat, but just cannot emphasize enough that if you have questions at all about the application process, myself and my colleagues would love to hear from you. Like, really, it would make us happy. So thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Any questions for Sarah right now that you might have? Go ahead and you can either type them in the chat or you can unmute your mic, either one. Thanks. Sarah, I had a quick question for you. There's like 11 other STEM scale-up programs. Can people apply for more than one, or is it just one per person?
Nope, they can apply for more than one. And there is an opportunity in the application to prioritize the resources are limited for awards. And so if you apply for more than one, you have an opportunity to rank them. So to say Fierce and Fearless is 1 of 3 applications that I'm submitting, and another program is 2 of 3. So that indicates to the regional advisory boards and the managers when they're making the awards, we always make sure that we give you your first choice. We would never jump the line in your priorities.
Awesome. Yeah, because there's some really good stuff in there, of course, I mean.
Yeah, we're all very excited about the menu, and really thrilled to see so many local programs, like really Iowa grown, that rose up out of a national search. This was the largest pool of programs we've ever received by like 3-fold.
Wow.
Yeah, so the competition was really stiff this year, and the programs that rose to the surface, we are all incredibly excited about.
That's awesome. And then Dawn asked a question in there, can more than one person from the same district apply?
Yes, absolutely. So Dawn, to answer your question, if you have specifics, it's great to reach out to the regional manager who can kind of coach you on how to best do it. But typically the awards belong to the building of the organization. So if it's multiple applicants from different buildings in a district, like elementary school or a pre-K building and the middle school, those would be separate applications. But if it's multiple educators in the same building for the same program, you put them all on the same application. But let's say you wanted Fierce and Fearless in the middle school and in a pre-K building, then that would be two separate applications.
Got it. And I mean, if you're thinking about taking Fierce and Fearless with another person, that's actually really ideal, because then you can talk to each other, think about how you're going to modify the program, share different supplies and things like that too. Erin asked, can you talk more about the stipend? Yes. And okay, off the top of my head, Sarah, please correct me if I'm wrong, but it's roughly every 2 months, starting in July, you will get a $200 stipend for classroom supplies and materials. Okay, now, in addition to that stipend, about every 2 months, we will also release some supplies, like classroom supplies, to you so that you can implement some of the STEAM units that we've released, for that like season. So we're going to be releasing these STEAM units to give you a month or 2 months of lessons that you can adapt and use transcurricularly in your classroom. And like I said, Jennifer and I have created one for this winter. It's actually a snowflake one. So it's, looking at snowflakes through a math lens, through an art lens, through different lenses, and, having kids do projects on that for an entire month. You will have an opportunity to get a sample of that at the end of this presentation. We'll show you exactly how you can get that for free. But those are going to be included in the Fierce and Fearless program for you.
Yeah. In addition, what Yen and I have done is we have curated some text sets that you can purchase with that money as well, that are designed. Again, we want to look at texts that meet the needs of all students and that are not just showing old white guys in science, basically. Okay. And so what we're doing is we're curating culture responsive texts that include women of color, other people in there that show the diversity in STEAM and who has contributed to STEAM. And so we have those text sets that we're working to get ready for you, that you could purchase with some of that money. And one of them is, I love this one. One of them is just it says, how do you make an invisibility cloak? So for all of the Harry Potter fans, right? This book walks us through the science of that, which I think is incredibly fun to use. And so that's like one of the texts. So.
Yeah, a lot of fun stuff. And there's one that's like all about explaining the properties of matter, and it's a comic book. Yeah. So, because I just, both Jennifer and I really enjoy the kinds of texts that are almost non-traditional in a way, that aren't preachy. That was one of the things I always talk about, is like, I don't want this to be like typical school, typical preachy. We want something that people are really going to get into, stories and application of science and examples of, some diverse role models to reach more kids and really get them, turned on to STEAM. So that's our purpose. Okay, so without further ado, welcome back, everybody. We are in our second set. We shall go till about 12 o'clock. We're probably going to end a little early to leave some room for questions. Okay. So without further ado, I am going to turn the stage over to Jennifer. And unfortunately, I'm a little clumsy here. So
I just want to answer Jennifer. These questions. So Julie, if you're accepting more than one program, if there's a conflict in times, we are recording each of our sessions on those Tuesdays, so that if you have to miss one because you're due somewhere else, you can get access to that as well. So absolutely, we'll make provisions for that.
Oh, yes. Oh, and Sarah has more about the stipend. A $200 training allowance will be distributed to each awarded educator 5 times throughout the award period. Thank you, Sarah. I knew you would pull it up. The training allowance is expected to cover off-contract time, technology to participate in virtual training, and equipment and materials for the educator's classroom. So yes, there you go. One of the reasons why, I will tell you, when we applied to be a STEM scale-up program, you can probably tell I'm the one that really loves the literature and the research. And I knew we wanted to create a program that was going to really transform how you teach and support you in those ways. And I also knew that one form of that support is being able to get the supplies you need to teach in the ways that your students deserve. And so, you know, what you're seeing here, like I said, is a culmination of the research that I've done, the research that Jennifer's done, her coaching and everything, to create a program that is here to support you when you are teaching STEAM. So even if you've taught STEAM for a while, or if you're new to it, this is about helping you level up to where you need to be, and also to help you move toward and accomplish that vision that you have of, you know, the perfect STEAM program that's in your library classroom. So that's, you know, that's why we actually built that in, because we wanted to make sure that you had everything you needed to get this up and running. So other questions at all? Go ahead, Sarah.
I'm finding my mute button. I wanted to just address the question that went in the chat about if there's a conflict with the training time, what provisions are made. And so I just wanted to say that I thought it would be a little easier to talk about it than to just like throw it in the chat, because you do have to attend the trainings in order to receive, to continue to receive those stipends. That is a provision of the award. So awardees who don't attend the first training session forfeit the program and the award. I think that's important to put out there up front. We also recognize life happens. So communication, a little communication goes a long way. If you anticipate an absence for any reason, reach out to Yen and your regional manager and just sort of explain what's going on. And there are ways to accommodate that. We'll work with you on an individual basis. On the ongoing trainings, as an awardee, you would have 2 weeks from the monthly online assignment due date to complete the required online assignments. Otherwise, you forfeit the remaining award. So we've got catch-up dates set. October 31st, I'm sorry, August 31st, October 31st, December 31st, February 28th, and March 31st. So we've made some provisions for that. I just wanted to describe that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. Also, the other thing, part of the reason why, you know, this is, I would imagine, a bigger commitment for you is because, like I said, transformative teaching involves commitment, but also this is eligible for 2 relicensure credits through Drake University and 1 graduate credit. Now, those are not covered by STEM Scale Up. Those you would pay to Drake University. So we have the draft working syllabus and things like that, so that those become credits for you for the work that you're doing in the program. Okay, and then Wendy says, can you give the dates again for the trainings? Yes, the dates are actually on the Entreport page. They're also in, are they on the one pager, Sarah? Yeah, they're on the one pager as well. Other questions on this? Okay. And just keep asking. We can always stop and pause. So don't hold your questions if you need to ask, okay? Thank you, Sarah. She's so good. Yay. All right. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Let's see. Hang on. Okay. All right, go ahead, Jennifer.
All right, so we first wanted to speak to the elephant or the black cat in the room, so to speak, and that is pandemic teaching. And so what we wanted to just name, right? If you're thinking, why am I going to go join a program in the middle of pandemic teaching, right? Where, you know, this might be you. 60% of teachers are dissatisfied with their jobs and 27% are considering quitting, retiring, or taking a leave. We want to talk about the fact that if you are feeling overwhelmed, right? Exhausted, having to adjust from day to day, frustrated, worried about your students, you are not alone. And that's one of the aspects from this program that's going to help, right? You're not alone. This program is designed to not only give you support and mentoring, but reduce the amount of stress and exhaustion that you're facing in teaching, whether you're in person, online, or a hybrid model. And so as we go through this program, you're going to be getting very specific resources and techniques that will reduce the amount of time you're having to put into prepping in those areas and get you set up for success, so that at the end of the day, your students are exhausted from doing the learning, not you. Okay, so that's the goal. And if we move on here to, we're going to be talking about 3 tools today that are going to put students in the driver's seat using STEAM. The first one is, we're going to talk about developing positive professional identities, right? That's the inclusivity and engagement piece. We're going to engage with learning cues and T-charts, and we're going to tell you more about that. We're also going to scaffold with questions to guide that learning trajectory. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start with the first one, and that is that learning identity, right? So developing positive professional identities. And what we want to note, we want to name here is that if students can learn anything, then they can do anything. If we're teaching them how to learn, if we're giving everyone the rules to the game for how to attack learning and how to critically think, to communicate, those 4 C's, right? Then they can do whatever they want to. And so in our work, we're about helping students develop their identities, their scientist identities, and really being able to name, I am a leader, I am an entrepreneur, I'm a scientist, I'm a teacher, a singer, historian, artist, poet, whatever it is that they feel like they want to become. We want to name that with them. We want to help them with their identities. And so as we're talking to our students in in writing, we talk about, all right, poets, how are you being a poet today? How are you being a speaker today? How are you being a historian when they're in math or they're in science? How are you being a scientist? What does that look like? And that's where some of these tools come in, is we don't want students to think that a scientist is just that old white guy. I'm just going to say that, and I hope that's not offensive to anyone, but right, that's the key, right? That's not what a scientist is. So really developing their own scientist identities. How am I being a scientist, right? You're going to learn science by being scientists. We're going to name it for them. How are they being a scientist? They're going to develop these identities in our program, right? And it's beyond naming it. We're actually going to be giving them tools to drive them towards those identities, right? In a culturally authentic manner, right? It's about everyone seeing themselves in any role that they want to be. It's the windows and mirrors that we have to make sure are both there. And so that, to me, like, this is the core of the work we do, because if we don't open that door, if we don't show those mirrors, right? And show scientists who I can be a scientist, right? Whether I'm female, whether I'm a Black, brown, if I'm a Native student, I should be able to see a mirror into me doing these things. And so that's what we want to do. We want to make sure that's the core of the work that we're doing. And so from there, we're going to move into the next tool, and Yen's going to kind of share that.
Yeah, and I just want to add, with this developing positive professional identities, you have in your packet, I call them meta sheets because I hate calling them worksheets, because to me, when I was growing up, I hated worksheets. They were work and not learning. Meta sheets are about like getting the thinking process there. So this is what kind of scientist are you, right? And a picture of being a scientist, and really getting students to put themselves into those positive identities. And, it's as simple as saying, hi, junior scientists, today we're going to do this experiment. As poets, we're going to write poetry today. And why that's important, I'll share, is we have a person on our team, Aubrey, who is a special education and early childhood specialist. And she shared this with me when we talk about this technique. She said, my entire life, nobody ever told me that I could be an engineer. And she said, if I had known that, my career probably would have been completely different, because I was good in math. But because nobody ever told me that that was something that I could be, I never pursued it. And so when you name it, and when you tell kids that this is something that they are doing and being, it opens that possibility for them. And it can change their lives just by that simple change in words. So going on, what I want to share with you is a slice of interactive spatial learning. And the reason why this is so important is because a learning trajectory is a way of taking our natural tendencies to learn and then using that to make the learning easier for your students and the teaching easier for you. Here's how I would like to explain it, okay? There is an assumption that goes behind interactive spatial learning. And that assumption is that all of us are instinctively born with learning tendencies. As soon as we're born, we're already learning from day one. We're learning, the sound of who our mother is. We're learning about the warmth. We're learning about texture. We're learning about environment. We're all natural learners, and we do this throughout our life. It's not just school where we're learning. Now, I would argue that learning is just as instinctive as eating, okay? And the reason why I'm saying that is because imagine if eating were treated like we treat learning. So if schools were about eating, you would go in and you would be served exactly the same thing. You would have to eat at exactly the same amount of time. And with some of these assessments, you would have to eat it within a certain amount of time. Otherwise, you are behind. Can you imagine what if that school only served broccoli and you didn't like broccoli? Well, now you would be not a good eater because you're not eating the broccoli. Now imagine if you had to learn how to eat broccoli for 2 hours a day because you were behind in eating broccoli, okay? And recess was about eating cake, but you can't eat the cake because you have to have the broccoli first, and you must eat it well, and you must eat it around a certain amount of time. Do you see where I'm going with this? And what Jennifer said, or you could only eat with one utensil, and that is the only one that's approved. So you're not allowed to use like forks and sporks and chopsticks because that's not allowed. They're only assessing how you eat broccoli with a fork. Well, once you get out, now you've got people that are like, broccoli's not for me, right? Or you've got people that are like, yeah, chicken's not for me. I hate chicken. I had a bad experience in chicken in school. Okay, so what I want to bring this back to is if we did that in schools, it is no wonder that people would probably leave saying, I didn't eat anything in school. It was terrible. I had things stuffed down my throat, and I had to be timed and assessed, right? But that's exactly what we're doing in learning. If learning is a natural instinct that we naturally have, think about how often you go on Google. How come some of you, right, came here because you wanted to learn more about this program? You wanted to learn organically because learning is our instinct. But oftentimes what happens in schools is that we're overlearning. It's about teaching and not so much learning. So what ISL does is it helps you understand how to activate organic learning. It would be similar to, I'll share this, taking a student that is in the school of eating that has eaten the same thing every day, year and year again, and then putting them in front of a buffet and giving them a plate and saying, pick what you want. Eat what you want, whenever you want. Now, there's ways to do that, but you can imagine it's a lot easier to do that than making a kid sit down and eat Spam, right? So in this case, I want to share with you the learning trajectory, okay, which starts with a learning cue. Now, when you set up a learning trajectory, you're going to use that curiosity, the natural curiosity, to be the momentum and the, what do I want to call it? And the influence, the motivation for them to ski down the slope. Okay, so once that learning gets kickstarted with a cue, you add fuel using curiosity by adding the resources. And then the deep, powerful learning happens in the application and evaluation. So now the next two tools that we're going to give you is how you kickstart that learning and then what you do to get them down this learning trajectory. So, ready? Okay, because this is probably one of my favorite learning tools right here. Okay, so here's one way you can engage with learning tools, and you can do this across platforms. You can do this online, offline, whatever you want. Incidentally, I'm seeing people that are talking in chat, so keep going. If it's something that you need, just unmute your mic, okay? I don't mind that at all. And I appreciate Sarah, Jennifer, thank you so much for taking care of the chat. Okay, so a learning cue, like I said, is a spark. It's engaging student curiosity in shocking and provocative ways. The more of a shock factor, the more of a surprise that it leads to, the more open a student is going to be to want to find out what's going on and what's more. Now, for instance, what if I showed you a photo like this? Okay, and all I'm going to tell you about this is, yes, this is a living organism. This does exist. Okay, it's alive. And I'm going to give you a minute to just look at it. Now, I could open up with a question like, take a look at this photo. And then if I were to give this to students, which is very easy to do, I would say make a T-chart. And on the left side, write down your observations, all of them. And then on the right side, I want you to write down the questions that you have about this picture. Now, I am willing to bet that just the photo has you wondering and thinking. So what I'd like you to do is we're going to share another technique. Jennifer taught me this one called chat it up or chime it in. Okay, so I would like to invite you to either put your questions and observations in the chat or put your questions and observations, like just unmute your mic and go for it. What are you noticing and thinking and observing about this photo, please?
The great thing about this is there's no right or wrong answer, because what we're doing is we're asking you, what are you thinking? What are you noticing? What are you wondering?
It's organic. Let's see, Julie says, is it fuzzy or scaly? Looks like an underwater critter. It looks prickly and scaly. And then Alyssa says, it's very fuzzy toward the head and becomes less so when we move to the tail. Anything else? Oh, I like that one. Is it soft and crunchy? 4 antennae. Yes. Reminds me of centipede, which I don't like. I love it. And Jennifer says it looks like a Muppet. So notice when you look at it, it's so bizarre. It's so unusual that it makes you wonder about these things. Amber, I never thought about it like being crunchy. That's interesting. But do you notice like everybody's, and then Wendy's asking, is it hairy toward the head, less on the tail, right? Like you're observing and you're noticing. And notice when you're typing it in chat, you're communicating, which is one of the C's, right? You're critically thinking about it. Julie's asking, does it have a stinger? I can't see. So using a T-chart makes the critical thinking visible. Wendy asks, does it have a spine? These are all amazing observations and questions. And notice, I just want you to notice, we've activated 2 of the 4 C's, communication, right? And critical thinking. And I bet some of you are doing a little collaboration. When you're reading some of other people's comments and thoughts, it's getting you to wonder and think too. Sandra asks, it looks stripy under the hair. I love that. It looks, yes, it does. But notice the other thing, we're getting all of this input and I'm not teaching anything. This is a learning cue because it just kickstarted that thinking process right away, because we as humans can't help it. Because especially something this bizarre, you're probably wondering, okay, like when I first saw this, the first thing I thought is it going to hurt me? And how big is it? Right? But these are automatic things. Yes, Wendy's like, is it a pest or a useful organism? Now, Jennifer, you want to talk about a similar lesson with tardigrade and what happens once you get those observations?
Yeah, so I did I like to keep my hand in the game and teach, and so I go into classrooms unpaid to hang out, but I also still sub, and so I did a week-long substitute distance learning, and I never met these fifth graders before. What I did is I showed them a picture of a tardigrade, and that's how I introduced myself. I'm like, hey, how's it going? I introduced the tardigrade. And I'm going to tell you that those fifth graders who the teacher had said only two of them usually are engaging and on the like showing their cameras and interacting, within 5 minutes, everyone was engaging in the chat, interacting with each other about this organism. And what I did is I took that tardigrade and I leveraged the learning, the questions they had into the entire day. In writing, we were talking about creating, they were working on their, oh geez, my head just went away, on that thesis statement and supporting their ideas of a thesis. So together, we watched a quick video about the tardigrade, came up with a thesis as a shared experience to show them how they could apply it in their own piece. So we went across math with questions about the tardigrade because it has lots of feet. We did art where they had to create and design an outfit for the tardigrade to protect it. And we did it that whole day, like we did it for the entire week. We brought it in the learning. It was a shared experience that connected us, bonded us. And those kids, when I left at the end of the week, were like, can't you come back next week and do this with us? Right? Because they had been so engaged in the learning. It's not because I'm a great teacher, and it's not because I did a lot of work, right? What I did was I kickstarted their learning, and then I leveraged it into all parts of the lesson across my day. It was phenomenal. It was so much fun.
By the way, the last time we did this lesson, there were actually people that were Googling stuff on their phone to try and figure out the answer. And that's when you really know you got the learning cue down, is because people can't.
Who just Googled this? Just show of hands or yes in the chat. If you were looking this up already, yeah. Yeah. That's excellent. That's excellent.
And so notice what you just did. When you Googled it, you immediately went to finding information through resources. We just slid you down that learning trajectory without doing anything but showing you a picture. Okay. Now, what I want to share about this is these are all open access photos, and you can use them. And in your handouts, you've got a link to this through Smithsonian Open Access. There's all different kinds, and you can pull things about art and science and, climate and books and all kinds of things. And all you have to do is, again, if you teach how to use a T-chart, you can pull one of these photos up and use it as a way to kickstart any subject. In fact, this is one of the things that we show our teachers in a lot of our programs is what is the learning cue that's going to start the whole process, because that learning cue becomes the basis, the framework for everything else. As you noticed, like it's automatic once you start doing that, right? But here's the other thing too, is I didn't have to lecture to any of my students for this to happen. And because students used a T-chart, you can take that T-chart and you can do a think, pair, share with it, right? Share your T-chart with another person. And from there, pick 3 things that you want to share. When it's your turn, choose one. I love doing that exercise because this is what it does. Every child now gets a chance to communicate and collaborate with other people, but they do it based on their own knowledge of what they saw, what they're thinking, what they're questioning. And that's really valuable, because what we're doing is you've just given your students voice, because now they're making the observations, they're making their thoughts noticeable. And all you need to do is sit there and go, wow, that was incredible. This student really pays attention to detail. This student is really paying attention to application. This student is really creative about the different ways that they did the research on that, right? It's all about listening to the information that's coming forth. And this is very, very organic. So what I want to share too is that this is only one kind of learning cue. There are several different kinds of learning cues. Those of you that are familiar with next generation science standards, another kind of learning cue is a phenomena, science phenomena, right? That's a learning cue. There are discrepant events, and there are other things. In Fierce and Fearless, we go through, in fact, the first couple months of Fierce and Fearless is about what kinds of learning cues can we use to start our lessons, to kickstart that learning process, okay? All right, for some reason, I lost my chat screen. Wait. Okay, I can't find it. Jennifer, is it okay if you're monitoring chat? Just let me know if, okay, or just unmute your mic, okay? All right, so what you can use these for is, like I said, you can ask questions. Oh, by the way, so this is what I want to share. Just by the photo and what you just did, you've addressed already 3 of the science and engineering processes that are embedded in the next generation science standards. Asking questions and defining problems, analyzing and interpreting data, and obtaining and evaluating and communicating information. And what you'll find is these processes, although we specifically pulled the terminology from the next generation science standards, you will see similar processes because these reflect the 21st century skills in art, in ELA, in math, and in social studies. This is where you touch on all the subjects transcurricularly. It's the 21st century skills. Okay, so going back to the learning trajectory, notice we've captured your learning. You can use a think, pair, share to get them to the resources, asking questions like, where can you go to find out more information? What did you do to search that information on Google? How did you look for that information? Incidentally, that's a marine worm. And if that's something you're really interested in Smithsonian, there's tons of pictures of marine worms, and they all look quite shockingly hideous and scary. And so, really good stuff that you can use for your classroom. Okay, so once you get those juicy questions from your students that you ask, right, you've captured them on a T-chart. You can then go to the next piece of this, the resources of how do you answer the question? You as a teacher don't have to answer it. As long as you've got internet, as long as you've got books, the next question is, how would you find the answers? And guess what you've just taught them? You have now empowered them to not have to rely on just the teacher for the information. You've now taught them and empowered them on how they can find answers to any question for themselves. That's what you do when you teach it this way, okay? Now, the other thing about bringing in resources is you can see how that's going to make them hungry for answers because you're not using the questions you created. You're using the questions that students created, okay? Now, you're probably wondering, how do we get them to this apply and evaluate? And so this is where my third tool comes in. You're going to scaffold with questions and with prompts. Prompts like, tell me what you've learned. And pulling everybody's observations together is one form of learning. Like when somebody mentioned it's got 4 antennae, I was like, oh yeah, it does, right? I just learned this thing has 4 antennae, right? There's things about other people's observations and getting them together, getting them collaborating in that way, where they're learning amongst themselves just from the observations that they have and just from the questions that they have. Now, when you teach with questions and prompts, rather than you being the sage on stage and the answer person, you've now become the guide. They're driving the learning right now. And all you have to do is be the guide. You're in the passenger seat now. And you just have to give them the questions. Tell me what you learned. How did you arrive at that conclusion? What else do you want to know or find out about this? It's the questions that help guide them. And we have given you a very powerful tool to help you with that. I created an ebook, which is linked in your manual for critical thinking questions. And those critical thinking questions are going to address the different stages of the learning trajectory for you. So for instance, you've got a whole page of critical thinking questions on how do you engage students, right? Because that's always been a big thing, especially with online learning. How do I get students to engage? And what you do is you hook them with a learning cue that gets them thinking, and then you engage them with questions. What do you observe? How do you describe can you describe what you're thinking and feeling? Tell me more about this, right? So this is your repository of questions to get them to engage and communicate and reflect. And what I want to say is this is a taste of many of the resources that we will be giving you in the Fierce and Fearless program. And by the way, Jennifer and I are also working on writing a couple books because I have been told over the past 3 years that ISL needs to be published. So it's in my thesis, but now it's time to actually get a book out on it. And so that's what we're doing. And guess who gets the first crack at those manuscripts? It's going to be our Fierce and Fearless teachers, of course. So, just letting you know, this is going to be a great opportunity. And also we get to listen to you as well and make sure that that content is really geared towards your needs. So I just want to summarize real quick, 3 easy tools, right? Don't need a lot of planning. You can print out the critical thinking questions and you can just have them next to you. And as you see kids opening with some of that thinking process, just start throwing those questions in. It's sort of like putting kindling into the fire. That's what you're doing, okay? And it's their fire. They've ignited the learning. They're going to find that out. So the 3 tools that put your students in the driver's seat. First is developing positive professional identities. I am a scientist. I am an inventor. I am an engineer, right? That already gets them to the holy heck, I am behind the driver's seat and I am driving the car. Okay. The next is you're going to engage with learning cues using photos. And then Jennifer, I realized this was your slide, so I apologize. You want to go through the next ones? You want me to keep going? All right. Okay, the next one here is you're going to scaffold with those questions, right? That critical thinking ebook is going to help you with that. So you don't have to sit there and go, what questions am I going to ask? Don't need to do that. You can be like, okay, we need to reflect. Just get to the reflection part and start asking those questions there. All right, so we want to take a pause because here's the other piece of it. We want you to apply and reflect too. So Jennifer, you want to take this one?
Yep. And some people have already been doing this in the chat, which I'm loving. But think about what is one thing that you've taken from this section that you can apply to put your students in the driver's seat tomorrow or the next time you see them, or that you can incorporate into your work next week. And just go ahead and pop that in the chat. And I'm going to say, Julie, I just want to share Julie. She said she was thrown into the position of the library. She's not an educator and she has to branch out, which is why she's doing STEAM. And it's overwhelming sometimes thinking I have to show the kids all of it. And she said, thank you for showing that I don't.
You absolutely don't. And in fact, sometimes when you don't, all you have to do is back up and give them the space so that they can fill it in for you. Because here's the thing about curiosity, right? Curiosity is so powerful and so instinctive in us that we as humans are naturally wired to want to find the answers. And what we have to do is let that curiosity burn in your students so that they are driven to find the answers. They're not going to you for it, but you now open the world so that they can find those answers for themselves. So really, really glad that was helpful.
Wendy said using photos.
Love it.
And she also said the light bulb turned on for her. She overthinks what learning or STEAM needs to be. So
woohoo! Anything else? that anyone wants to share? Incidentally, you'll notice something when you share in here, it's also inspiring other people too. So maybe, your ideas, go ahead and share them because other people can see them and be like, oh yeah, I'm going to use that too. Look, like Sandra says, using photos for multiplication cues. Oh yeah. And you can actually create a whole like deck of those. Like, how your workbook is Google Slides? That's actually a Google Slide deck that workbook is on. You can put a number of those different photos on a Google Slide and have your kids write their observations next to it as well. And then Julie says here, my area has very little internet, so most of my area is printable. And so you can take photos. You can also, photos don't have to be the only thing. Oftentimes when I taught biology, I would print off like a diagram of something and leave the labels out. And then what I would do is be like, okay, here's your challenge. And the diagram would not look like the same diagram in the book. And then what I would do is say, okay, using the resources in this room, I want you to find and label and give me the functions of as many things as you can find in the diagram. And what I love about that is when you have two completely, or not completely different, but two diagrams of the same thing and they look slightly different, your students have to start talking about similarities and about differences. And so you can absolutely do this with printables as well, Julie. You just have to, think about what kinds of printables can work. I went into, when my son was in 4th grade, they did something on skeletons. And what they had were, piles of the bones of the skeleton, like the human skeleton. And, and the teacher had, of course, like you always see the worksheets with the skeleton and then you have the labels and you have to put them in. Well, I told him to leave out the labels. I was like, no, just give them the bones. And then the first challenge was assemble the skeleton based on the resources you have in the room. What resources, Dr. Yan? Well, don't you have skeletons? Aren't you walking around with skeletons? So they had to look at each other and they had to study like what were the different bones based on their own skeletons, right? And then we gave them the books after that. But I'm just saying there's different ways to start a learning cue and most of your lessons have them. You just have to teach them slightly out of order. All right. Okay, so what I want to talk about next is let's get into the meat and bones, of the Fierce and Fearless program. Incidentally, when I move the chat over here, is it okay? Can you still see the screen or no? You can. Okay, so I can put the chat there. Great. All right. So I was having trouble seeing both. Okay, so what I want to do is talk about Fierce and Fearless and what happens in, kind of the month-by-month breakdown. So in July and August, when we start, you're going to, again, we're going to revisit that STEAM vision, and you're going to get the social and emotional learning and culturally responsive teaching tools to make that happen for you, to really create that framework from day one in your classroom. Okay, and so you're going to get tools that are going to save you time while increasing student learning. You're going to move from our ideas of content-based instruction, remember the hammer, to 21st century skills instruction, focusing on the 4 C's. That's what we're talking about when we talk about these tools. And then we're going to show you how to develop scaffolds for online, offline, and hybrid environments. It's going to streamline your planning time. Because I know some of you that have been doing online, it's almost like you've had to plan 3 different lessons at once. We're going to show you frameworks where you only have to plan one time, and it's going to work across all of those environments for you, with your students being able to collaborate across environments, okay? And then we're going to show you how to weave the nature of science and NGSS into every subject. One of my biggest pet peeves, I will tell you, is when you go on the internet and you Google something like science experiments, what you actually get are a bunch of crafts and not science. It drives me crazy because that's not science. Science is not just creating, the same thing and calling it science. It's not. It's actually about a thinking process that really leverages the 4 C's. So we're going to show you what that really looks like. so that when you look for activities, you'll know which ones are really, truly rigorous and are going to really meet the needs of your students. Okay, so in September and October, this is where we're going to really introduce you into interactive spatial learning theory, ISL. Today, you got a slice across. So what I want you to think about is ISL is actually a three-dimensional model. These circles that you see are actually spheres, and they move, okay? The learning trajectory is like cutting across all three of those spheres at one time. The learning cue engages students at the identity piece of who they are as a learner and as a thinker. The interaction are the resources and the community resources. When I go to Google, I am actually accessing my resources of information provided to me by this community. The interaction is, in what ways do you do that? In what ways do I apply and synthesize? So that trajectory is one small line that goes across ISL. You're going to get into more detail about that in September and October. We're going to help you create those transdisciplinary opportunities to practice 21st century skills and higher order thinking in everything, okay? And then you're going to simplify your teaching load by busting myths about science, standards, and standardized testing. Standardized testing is another piece that we're going to help you with so that you're not playing the game of, I have to teach 304 standards in the first semester. We're going to say, no, you don't. We're going to show you how you can take the 21st century skills and help students with standardized testing because they know how to critically think and apply those skills to any test that they take. I'll pause just a second because I'm seeing some things here. Oh, okay. Sarah says, reach out to your STEM manager. Wendy says, if I was awarded this grant and changed to a different district. Oh, that's a Sarah question. So I'll let Sarah answer those. Okay. So, and then you're going to explore the concepts of earth science, physical science by examining weather, climate, and its relationship to human activity. Because this is like the first semester for many of you going in, we start with weather journals and nature walks. And we're going to give you the science behind that so that you can teach it at any level, whether you've got kindergarten students all the way up to 5th and sometimes even 6th grade, depending on where you are. Okay.
And can I interject again? The other part of September, if you backtrack to the July and August piece, what I wanted to make mention is that what we're going to be doing is we're going to be creating the community of support for everyone. So Wendy brought that up with creating communities and cohorts and collaborations. And that's what we're going to do in that July and August time is we're going to be connecting everybody together. And that sort of collaboration is going to be able to happen in our group starting in July and August. So I just wanted to mention that.
Yes. And also you will also have mentors in that community too. So, you can reach out to Jennifer and I and Danielle and Trina as well. So that you can ask those questions about how do you teach this in this environment, or I'm not really clear on this science, or, how do I reach to a more diverse audience, so these are all kinds of questions that our community space is going to help you with. Okay, let's see, September, October. Okay, November, December is about leadership and agency, your leadership as well as leadership and agency for your students. This is the time when you're going to start to feel that winter burnout, right? When we're all tired and we can't wait until the holidays where we can get our Christmas break. And so the idea is, how do we set those healthy boundaries to maintain your health and energy? And how do you use metacognitive strategies to nurture self-directed learning and student autonomy? How do we really leverage that learning trajectory so that students are driving the learning, so that you can be the guide? And then we'll help you with holiday challenges using physical science, earth science, and engineering projects, like making, holiday challenges like how do we light up Rudolph's nose on our holiday cards? Or how do we turn our typical, gingerbread housing project into an engineering challenge? Okay, so these are the things that we're going to do in November and December. Okay, January and February is about strategies for support. In January and February, we shift gears a little bit. You've got your toolbox, you've got your vision. January and February, we're going to start talking about how you get that vision to happen. How do you create something that is sustainable throughout the year, even after you are done with Fierce and Fearless? So it's about showing you how to create those strategic relationships and partnerships to support your vision. As you can see, even being in this info session, you know, knowing Sarah and then the STEM regional managers has just connected you to a resource of things that you can reach out to ask for help in implementing your vision. Okay. You can focus on strategies behind evaluation, reflection, and assessment. This is about the time when people are starting to get a little stressed about, you know, getting students ready for assessment. We're going to show you how to do that in easy ways. And then engaging with life science and weather again. You know, January, February, like right about this time, I'm like, all right, it's time to get the spring planting done because I am done with the snow, right? As I'm sure a lot of you are. So we're going to add a little bit of that spring to your month by starting to talk about life science in that time as well. March and April is about manifesting your vision with passion and creativity. And this is with your students too. This is like the end of Fierce and Fearless. And we will help you develop strategies and resources to fund your movement so that you're unstoppable. Now that we've given you the tools, we want you to go forth and conquer and change the world with all the things that you're doing in your vision. But we also want to show you how to teach differentiated learning through passion projects. Because after testing, you know, this is a great time for kids to explore what they're passionate about. We're going to share with you ways that you can do that so that you can help them pursue their passion. Okay, so they're going to develop passion projects around engineering, life science, physical science, and earth science. Okay, now the bonuses. This is kind of my favorite part. One of the reasons we can offer you these bonuses is because of the collaborations, the powerful collaborations that we have with other content creators. You'll get 52 STEM challenges. You're going to get these online adaptive informational texts through Readorium. You'll get the teaching methodology and library that we developed. So Key Learning has a library. When we first started Key Learning Research Group in 2018, I actually achieved a Bill and Melinda Gates grant to develop a resource library for teachers. So we're adding to that library over the past couple of years. So our newest addition are these transcurricular units that Jennifer and I are developing. You will get the year's worth of those units when Fierce and Fearless opens up. You'll get the digital reading comprehension tutor, which is, I'm sorry, I get them mixed up. Online adaptive informational texts is Starmatica, digital comprehension tutor is Readorium. And then, if you haven't done so, STEMCon 2020 is now open for you to apply for admission, okay? And that starts in April. This conference is actually for STEMCon 2022, next year. We're all going to go as a cohort together. You get free admission to that because, of course, I am one of the speakers. So you will get that and we all get to go together, which is going to be fun. It is virtual. And then, of course, like we said before, any new classes Key Learning develops, you've got the 2 books, Cultivating Genius and Teaching Science to Every Child. Those are all yours in this program, okay? So program at a glance, just reviewing. Fierce and Fearless STEAM Teacher is valued at $3,000. The STEM Challenges Bundle, $148. Starmatica Informational Text, $99. STEAM Resources and the Units, $2,150 because you get the whole year. The Readorium Interactive Science Tutor for $399. Teaching Science to Every Child and Cultivating Genius. And then STEMCon, this should be STEMCon 2022. I get my years mixed up these days, so sorry about that. Which is a $40 value, okay? You are also eligible to get 2 certification credits and or 1 grad credit for Fierce and Fearless through Drake University. And then your supplies and stipends for an additional $1,500 for a total value of $7,260. All you have to do is apply for the Scale Up grant or award. Sorry, Sarah, I keep getting that mixed up, but it's a STEM Scale Up Award for these things. Now, I just want to share with you a quote by Janet. She has been with us for a couple of years, since 2019. She's been involved in some of our workshops. And this is what she says. She says, "You and your team have been saving my teaching life since I found you. I already finished my 2019-2020 school year in second grade." Now, when she found us, she is in our Rebels teaching community. She went to the conference last year. She's been a big fan of our work. And as you can see, we do have a team on board that's going to help you with this. She says, "I've been rumbling about STEM and PBL the whole year to whoever was willing to listen. I am headed." So she now heads the STEM department in my school at the elementary level next year. This was her vision, and now she gets to turn this into a reality. And that is what she is doing. And like I said, we will give you the support. We will give you the vision for it. One thing, though, that I have to say about this is when you join the program, more than likely, your vision is going to be bigger and, I would say, scarier than you may have ever imagined. But one thing I always like to say is, if your vision doesn't scare you, you're not dreaming big enough. Now, I want to share with you a story about Malcolm, who was, he is a teacher that I worked with a couple years back. And Malcolm was super energetic. His kids enjoyed taking his class, and he had a vision for empowering students through education. And what that did is it led him to working overtime while balancing his master's program. Because, you know, it is highly unusual for any teacher to ever want to take on more than just teaching, right? So he decided he was going to balance this with a master's program too. But, you know, one day he actually came to me like totally dejected, and I had watched him kind of go downhill for a while. He was pale, he was exhausted because he was teaching both his classes and his master's program at the same time. He also wasn't sleeping because he was lesson planning and he had his studies. Does this sound familiar? So as a result, he was really cranky and argumentative. And he even had, the day before, he actually had a fight with our boss, the Dean of Education, and with some of the other faculty. And when he came to me, he was really surprised by my first question, which was, "Malcolm, how are you sleeping?" And, you know, think about that, right? Does this sound familiar to you? How are you sleeping this year? Right? Like with the pandemic, I have to say, you know, I myself have had trouble sleeping. There are some nights that are harder than others. So, you know, that conversation moved away from sleep to talking about burnout. Because one of the things that we worry about, and it was that statistic that Jennifer shared, is, you know, a lot of teachers this year are considering burnout and considering quitting teaching altogether. One of the things that we wanted to do with Key Learning is to keep good teachers in the profession, because we know that the world needs you. The world needs your talent. It needs your gifts. It needs your superpower. But we also know that if you don't take care of yourself, there's not going to be anything left for your students. So going back to Malcolm, I shared ways that he could teach more efficiently and plan less, while his students did more of the work and learning. Are you catching the theme here? I told him, your students should be walking out of the classroom exhausted, not you, not you. So we worked on self-care and carving out time for him to rest and rejuvenate. And over the year, I watched him turn things around. Once he started getting sleep, once he was able to let his students take the driver's seat, he was less tired and cranky, and he was excited about teaching his class again. His students were absolutely loving his class. And as a result, his student evaluations earned him a recognition of excellent teaching award from the college. And you know what? He finished his master's in another year. So what I want to send out to you, one of your take-home messages, is that we believe very firmly that in order for us to be the best teachers our students deserve, we absolutely have to take care of ourselves and teach strategically with methods that put students in charge of their own learning, that puts them in the driver's seat for them to learn. So FFST is a totally free program that will cost you nothing except the time that you need to apply. And even then, like what Sarah has said, it's going to take about 45 minutes or so, the actual application. It's not a lot of writing, but it is a huge investment for you. And, you may have heard of some things like this before, but, Sarah's here. She can attest there are no strings attached. There are no hidden costs. So I am so certain that this program is going to change your life and that we're going to make a difference for you in your classroom. That we are actually going to offer you a small sample of that for free, because we know that, because this program doesn't start in July, you may want to try some of our stuff out right now. I would say give this a test drive, but you're not driving. So we're going to give you something so your students take the test drive. Okay. And so what we're going to do is give you our Snowflake unit for free. And what we want you to do, like I said, because we're so sure of this happening, let me just share my screen real quickly. Okay, I'm not sharing my screen, am I? Hang on. Ah. My Zoom is not coming up. Oh, there it is. I'm on 2 monitors and I get really confused. Okay. Okay, so here's what we would like you to do to spread the message. We will give you the Snowflake STEAM transcurricular unit, which is a month's worth of transcurricular lessons for free if you email 5 teachers and CC hello@keylearning.com. Now, this is $199 value because it is a complete unit. It's got lessons, it's got videos, very similar unit, videos on how you do your T-charts, how you do your learning cues, what the unit looks like, and all of those things. That is free, that you can use and teach right now, because everything, like, I'm sorry, but when I walk out the door, the first thing I say is, when is the snow going to go away? Because I am done, right? And so snow is like on everybody's minds right now. And so why not study it and take advantage of it? So in your manual, we even included a sample email that you can just copy and paste and then share with 5 other teachers. CC hello@keylearning. When we get that email, we will sign you up. The Snowflake Lab is in Thinkific, and you can get that for free and, try us out and teach that program right away. Okay. I just want to end this on one other note, which is this quote. Those who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones that actually do. So you'll see, like, throughout the whole presentation has been the STEM Scale Up Award. But what I want to invite you to do is dream and think so big and realize that you have the power to change the world. When I started Key Learning, people thought I was an absolute nut. Really. Like, I finished my PhD. I had a fellowship to go into an assistant professorship position. Had everything. I had my research, my publications, all of that stuff. And I gave it all up to start Key Learning because I said, I need to change the world now. And being an assistant professor is not fast enough for me. And like I said, people called me crazy. My nickname at my university is I am the nut. And I now say, thank you. I am a cashew, and it's very nice to meet you. So I invite you to, share that sort of crazy with me, change the world with me, spend the year with us, and dare to dream big. Get the vision for what you've always wanted to do, realize it, and let's just go through 2021 and 2022 fiercely and fearlessly. So thank you so much again for being here. And if you have any questions at all, Jennifer and I are here to answer them, and same with Sarah. So, and also you'll have the recordings as well. Questions at all? You can put them in chat. You can put them in, you can unmute your mic, or you can go. We're just really grateful that you came. Thank you, everyone.
Wendy, yes, you can email them all in one email. That's totally fine. Amber, because the email is about the Scale Up program, then we do ask that you email Iowa teachers for that. That helps.
Or librarians. You can email librarians too.
Yeah.
Thank you.